computer. Looks like we're recording. Okay, very good. This is Gordon Einstein, of course, and I would like to welcome my very longtime friend, David Johnston, onto what are now becoming very occasional videos since I have a baby. Of course, he's got 7 kids, so I can't really claim I'm busy. But David reached out to me and said he has to come back on because a lot is going on in his world of AI and decentralization and everything else. He's obviously a big pioneer in the space, and he keeps on rocking away, which is amazing. So, David, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here, Gordon. Thanks for having me, man.
Good to see you. You're looking very pirate-like with the lean face and the beard.
I did finally grow the beard. It's like, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm 40. I'm ready to embrace it. But yeah, it's been a wild few months between ChatGPT 4, ChatGPT 5 and Grok 4. There's just a ton going on in AI, so ready to nerd out about it.
Well, let's go into it. So, what prompted you to reach out and say we have to talk now? What are the big earthquakes, whether in general
So
or with Morpheus?
So, I mean, in general, like since we last talked, the models have now achieved like a PhD level of expertise in almost every field. So the last time we were hanging out, I was like, oh, cool, that's novel. It can write, some essays. It's kind of like a college student. But if you look at the benchmarks on, let's say, Grok 4, for example, like it really has gotten to 140 IQ expert in every field, which is really amazing because effectively we all now have access to this kind of intelligence, right?
Mhm.
You wanted a doctor, you wanted a lawyer, you wanted all of these professions, have one by just asking your AI. And we're at this important moment where I think the key is to own that personally, right? I want to own my intelligence as opposed to rent it
Mhm.
from the big companies. And so there's a lot going on. You've got Coinbase releasing new payment standards with 402, right? And they're integrating that with agents. We talk with the Coinbase development team pretty often. There's also been major releases by Google for
Mhm.
agent-to-agent protocols, so the agents can talk to each other. And then also MCP from Anthropic, where the agent can talk to a server, it can talk to a tool, right? And so we've gone from just large language models
Mhm.
to agents running on top of them to agents using tools to become experts in these areas. So yeah, I mean for the Morpheus community, it's been a wild like 6 to 12 months because we were saying this like it's coming, they're gonna get,
Mhm.
this good. And now finally I have a personal AI where I can get the benefit of that. So yeah, it's wild to think 2 years ago these were white papers,
Mhm.
and now Venice has over 1 million users, right? They're by far the most famous project so far built on Morpheus, but now there's over 250 projects on top. So
So
yeah, it's
it's a fascinating series of developments. But let me poke at it like I like to do. That 140 IQ physicist or whatever that you have in your pocket now.
yeah.
I keep on seeing these benchmarks. Like, there's like the last test or whatever it is, the final exam. Because humans can't design something harder at this point. The Are they? It's one thing to get the right answer. It's another thing to actually understand the answer they're giving. Are they?
Mm.
Is that actually something that we need, and is that there?
So one of the big developments the last 6 months has been the reasoning models.
Hmm.
And that's sort of what you're describing. Not only can the large language model, take a first guess, it can then look at its guess and say, huh, does that seem right? And, oh, I'll go check this website. And yeah, the primary source says that's the right answer. But maybe, I can fine tune it based on this other information and I'll go search 10 websites, right? Because now the agents are all connected to the internet.
Hmm.
So when it's outside of their training, something they don't understand that they would have hallucinated or guessed at in the past, now they can be like, well, I don't have a lot of certainty about that. I'm going to go check, right?
Hmm.
And in a few seconds, it can read 50 websites, right? Here's the Wikipedia, and here's the papers, and here's the academics, and I'm going to boil that all down into the conclusion. So some people have been calling those deep research agents, right? They can go and they'll go spend 5, 10 minutes
Mhm.
searching the internet, doing analysis, basically rerunning the prompt over and over again. So we've gotten a long way from like asking a question and it takes a guess to now it's iterating 100 times before it comes back to you with a final answer. And that's been really powerful for things like code. So the agents can now work for about an hour or two of human equivalent work time and come back with an accurate answer, right? So that's what we're seeing is they could do a task for a few seconds
Mhm.
and then maybe last year was a few minutes. And now it's a couple of hours. So if you ask an agent to go code something, right, it can not only look at all the other code, it can write something and then test it and then see if it works. And if it doesn't, where are the bugs and fix it. It can do these things. So take Claude and Cursor, two of the most popular engineering AIs.
Mhm.
They're doing something like 90% of all code at this point. And that number was zero 2 years ago. It went from
Right.
like a little toy to something every engineer is now using. And it's really collapsed development times from like months of development to build something to days. Right now, it's more just debugging and making sure the integrations work and testing it than it is like manually writing code. Like next year, nobody's going to be manually writing code
Wow.
anymore, any more than people, go and manually do math and not use a calculator, right? So it's wild to think that the era of handwritten code
Mhm.
is now over. I saw a great meme the other day where it showed the most popular programming language
Mhm.
by year, Java, Python, whatever. And this year it was English
Ah, that's funny.
because you're just saying in English what you want. And if you describe it well enough and you break it up into pieces, like it can reliably write all the code. And so, I mean, just that is incredible.
I've I'm having an unusual experience as a longtime lawyer when I
Mhm.
work with ChatGPT or one of these programs and talk to it or prompt it. I'm finding that my legal writing skills and my deposition skills are becoming highly relevant
Mm,
because the exact
mm,
phrasing of language and the elimination of wiggle room ends up being very valuable.
right.
Like
Yeah,
knowing how to pose a question or request and be clear about what you want and what you don't want, and not letting the person you're talking to slip away on some, you know, multi multi meaning piece of language is a lawyer thing, right? You're
right.
drilling them in a deposition. So, in some ways, I'm treating this AI as a hostile witness. And hostile doesn't mean angry. Hostile just means, you've got to lead it along and,
Yep.
box it in so it gives you what you want. And, I say almost in that hierarchy, there's English and there's lawyers English. I think I'm going to hurt some feelings, but, we'll see.
You
So,
have the prompting superpower. Yeah.
oh, that's nice. I choose to believe that. So, you've been working on Morpheus for a while. It's something we discussed last time we talked. We explain what
Yeah.
it is, and then say what's evolved and changed in the time this time.
So, yeah, I mean, you were one of the first people to do a podcast or an interview about Morpheus, I believe, back in early 2024. And so it's come a long way. I mean, effectively, Morpheus is for smart agents what Ethereum is for smart contracts.
Mhm.
Right? What does Ethereum give a smart contract? It gives you a place to publish the smart contract. It gives you, sort of all of the context and the ability to run that contract on chain.
Mhm.
Morpheus is doing that same thing, but for smart agents, right? So I need to publish my agent somewhere. It needs a large language model to run it. So Morpheus has all this compute and inference that can provide the open source models. So if you want to run your agent on Llama 3 or DeepSeek or whatever, right, you can route through to that GPU, run that large language model as the brain, and the agent, provides the fine tuning or context or whatever. And so if you believe agents and AI are going to do the majority of economic activity and transactions on our behalf and taking action on our behalf, then this is extremely important infrastructure that people should own. And the thesis of Morpheus is if you own the private key, you own the AI. Just like if I have my Bitcoin private key,
Hmm.
nobody can take those Bitcoin from me. Why? Because the network's always going to be there and I can always broadcast a transaction. Right? So if I put an agent on Morpheus, it's always going to be there, right? It's persistent forever, right? Because of the incentives, right? There's token emissions that are constantly fueling people to
Okay, so I'll
provide
ask
the
that. I'm gonna ask a fantastically dumb question. I think I know the answer. Morpheus is a blockchain product.
It's built on Web3 in smart contracts, and it's built on Ethereum, Arbitrum, and Base. Looks like it'll be expanding to Solana soon. So it's multi-chain. But yeah, it's Web3 native. It's basically that intersection of like, okay, all the AI tools I want to use,
Hmm.
leveraging the incredible tools on Web3. Like if I want to send a stable coin, if I want to have my AI do a transaction, like
Hmm.
ChatGPT can't do that. They don't have a wallet. It can't connect to Web3, right? It can just give you information. That's sort of the frustrating thing about AI today is you'll ask it, how to do something, and instead of doing it for you, it'll give you the 10 steps. But I don't want to do the 10 steps. I want my AI to take the action, right? And so Morpheus is dragging, AI into taking action on your behalf because it's your AI connected to your data with your wallet, and you can authorize it to do anything you want.
And are you comfortable with with great power comes great responsibility. Are you comfortable with the security of these Morpheus agents or these instances?
Yeah,
And
there's
tell
been
me
a
why.
lot of good work. There's been a lot of good work done by Coinbase. There's also a good open source project called Lit Protocol, and it allows you to sort of control everything about the transactions. I'm authorizing an agent, not, with my private key. It never touches my private key. Only I've got the private key,
Hmm.
right? I'm authorizing it to do a transaction up to this amount with this application for this duration of time, right? And so there's very fine-grained controls now where uh, and Coinbase, to their credit, did a lot of this work and released this as if you know multi-party compute,
Sure.
MPC. um, I can effectively, they're using MPC to do these transactions where you give this fine-grained control and authorization without exposing the private key. So I'm convinced that's a good approach. If I think about security from a data perspective, like what's ChatGPT doing? They're literally mining all your data, training their models on it, selling it to advertisers. Like it couldn't be worse, right? And then it gets leaked and hacked over time, and all of the personal information that you put on there ends up on the web, right? So that's the alternative. And then in the Morpheus context, it's my AI, it's encrypted. Let's say I'm using some product like Venice on top of Morpheus,
Hmm.
and they're routing the encrypted text to the GPU, and then it's encrypted going back. And so
Interesting.
nobody's storing it. It's local to your browser on Venice. They don't store a copy. They don't have a copy. They never get a copy, right? And that's the best security. So from both like a controlling my access to my wallet and access to my data, is it perfect? Probably not, but it's like 100 times better than the alternative I have with ChatGPT.
Fair enough. The, and you kind of touched on it, but we kind of touched on the improvements of the AI in general, and you maybe touched on it with
Yeah.
respect to Morpheus. But these past few months, what are you most excited about? The integration of the Coinbase standards, or
Yeah, I mean it's all the builders that are flowing in. So there's now over 250 projects built on top of Morpheus. So if you just go to
as they say in Dubai,
more.org,
mashallah or mashallah. Good job. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you just go to more.org, mor.org, and you go to the builders dashboard, you can see all of these projects, Venice and CoinCap and all these others that are building, and they're just constantly churning out new agents, new tools, inventing things. I think there's over 1.6 million more staked now to builders.
Hmm.
What I love about that is it's like a reinvention of the ICO
Hmm.
where you can support whatever project you want, but your principal's never at risk. You hold the key. It's non-custodial. It all flows through the smart contract. So you've sort of gotten rid of all the central points of failure, right? None of these are a treasury. Nobody's holding money on your behalf. You know, if you want to
It's almost what
unstake and
Bitcoin
stake with
and
different,
ICOs and crypto was supposed to be.
yeah. That's what we were dreaming of back in like 2014, 2017,
Yes.
that time, but the tools just didn't exist, right? I remember the Ethereum, crowd sale, as they calls it at the time, you know, and it was all manual steps and like write down this thing, and maybe in 6 months we'll have something where you can put that string back in and something will be generated on the other side. Trust us, right? Like, we've come a long way from those days. When Venice did their token generation, they airdropped like $30 million of tokens
Mhm.
to the community, which was incredible because they used Morpheus as a way to bootstrap, where their first 4 or 5 thousand users were all in the Morpheus community staking towards them, right? And getting pro accounts and trying out the software and testing it. And then they sort of went into production and really took off. But that's so cool. That's exciting to me because that's everything I was imagining and hoping for. But now
Mhm.
it's permissionless and instant. And, the developers get paid based on how much people stake towards them. So they don't have to worry about any of those aspects other than building a great product
Mhm.
and telling people about it. Right.
So,
And so it sort of simplifies this world.
so who is Morpheus? You and
Well, nobody knows who the original three authors of the paper were. They called themselves Morpheus, Trinity, and Neo.
gotcha. Very
Obviously,
original.
allusion, yeah, to the Matrix. The funny thing is, I noticed they published the paper on September 2nd,
Mhm.
which is Keanu Reeves' birthday. I was like, I
Uh,
see what you guys did there. So,
uh,
nobody knows. I mean, 2023, it was a pretty hostile environment for AI, right? All the regulations were looking like they were going to ban the open source and stuff like that. That's now all been swept away by the new administration. So none of those regulations are still in effect. And so it's a much friendlier environment. So, but there are about 300 code contributors globally to Morpheus. I think I've worked my way up to number two on GitHub. So, I'm
okay.
spending a lot of time on it, brushed off my engineering hat. I've spent about 10 years on engineering, 10 years on capital, and I kind of tend to do a little bit of both. But, it's been amazing. I'd say there's probably 30 or 40 people that treat it as like their full-time focus. And these
That's
are guys in
serious.
Eastern Europe or Asia. Well, I mean, these communities are popping up. I mean, the protocol has paid $10 million in rewards to developers
Mhm.
the last 2 years. So yeah, that's a serious budget for people writing open source and releasing for free to the community. So that's one of the things I love is it rewards coders.
Mhm.
Most of the protocols only reward capital and compute,
Okay.
right? Capital is proof of stake and compute is proof of work, right? It's the Bitcoin and Ethereum
I
app.
got a wistful feeling for the DevX DAO and what could have been, but I don't want to hurt
I
anybody's feelings.
know, I know. The forgotten tribe is usually the developers, right?
Mm.
And to his credit, Ethereum and Vitalik did an amazing job of giving every developer that contributed to the Genesis to the
Mhm.
code before the Genesis block, like 2 or 300 people, they airdropped ETH to those people. That's why Ethereum ended up with all the developers, right? Yes, they did a good crowd sale. Yes,
Mhm.
they rewarded people from GPUs for mining, but that cohort of like really great talent that they aligned to the protocol is Ethereum, and it is why it captured that network. So I think the same thing's going to happen around smart agents, and I think that's going to come through Morpheus.
Interesting. Is there a board of advisors? Is there a company? Is it a pure decentralized contributions?
It's a set of smart contracts on Ethereum,
Isn't
right?
that amazing?
And yeah, and the protocol handles everything. It has the address of every code contributor or capital contributor or compute contributor and just automatically pays them out every single block. They're
Wow.
earning more tokens, right? And so there is no entity, there's no foundation, there's not even a DAO. Honestly, a lot of the DAOs have proven very bureaucratic. Like
Yeah.
apply here, and there's a committee, and like I've gone through those committees, and they're not always fair and permissionless. It's like a couple of guys that got in early, and only they get to put their proposals in, and that's really
Yeah.
lame, right?
And
So
any resemblance to anything I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago is purely coincidental.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately for human coordination,
Mhm.
that is a fundamental challenge everywhere you go, whether it's corporates or DAOs, right? And so to have a purely meritocratic system where if I write code and it gets used and people stake towards me, That's it. That's the whole system, right? And I don't need a bureaucracy to tell me, I am the favored, few that get the reward, right? And
You're
that's what
not
I
the
think
early
people love.
aristocracy.
Yeah,
You
you're not
set
the
the rules
early
once and
aristocrat.
never set them again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so, yeah, no, that's been really cool. So between the explosion in developers, projects launching, you know, big credit to the community who built an API gateway
Mhm.
that's really made it easy. They launched openbeta.more.org is where you can go get a free key and use all these large language models for free. And it's all running through the Morpheus platform. And what they did is they set up a subnet and it's paid through the emissions of the protocol.
Mhm.
So you're basically subsidizing everybody that wants to build an agent and wants free inference. They can just go and create a key and it takes a minute. I I am not a back-end engineer and I just pushed a button and boom, there's my API key and I can go build whatever I want. So yeah, I think the big focus going forward is all this great infrastructure has gotten built, and now it's about bringing that into the front end. Like most people don't run a full Bitcoin node or a
Yeah.
full Ethereum node, right? They experience it through MetaMask or through some wallet. And that's okay. You need those light clients where people don't have to be technical, they don't have to run any infrastructure, they just show up and use it. Right. So a lot of the community focus is now about building those front ends. I gave a talk at Consensus, and that was like, how do we get to 1 billion people? We have to be native to the internet, look exactly the same as a Web 2 interface and put all of the Web 3 in the back end where it just
Yes.
works. And we're getting there, right? We're getting there.
How did Morpheus first cross your radar? How did you become aware of it?
So I got a copy emailed to me of the white paper September of 23 because I had already been writing papers about the idea of smart agents. Right. And there was this community in 23 sort of fomenting around like, okay, they're going to be these agents and I want them to work on Web3. But most of my focus before that had been like, okay, I want to install it on my local computer. Right.
Yes.
And the Morpheus paper made a very powerful argument that that's great, but that's never going to get mass adoption. Most people don't want to run a full node. They don't want to download something and run their own infrastructure.
I
And a
see.
lot of
They're
people don't
analogizing
have
to
a
help you
laptop.
people. You need a MetaMask moment.
You need a
Right.
MetaMask moment. And so the Morpheus paper came across, and right after the paper came out, the Biden administration dropped their executive order in the next month in November of 23 and said, we're going to ban open source. We're going to do KYC on data centers. We're going to make it a licensed activity to develop these models or make AI, all this crazy stuff. And it was like, you're going to ban math. You understand this is just linear algebra, right? This is just a database. Like you're calling it AI. No, you don't get to ban math. And so the community got really, really riled up. And Eric Voorhees, to his credit, and Beth Bezos and I and Riva and a bunch of we held an event in San Francisco right after OpenAI's Dev Day, and we called it Keep AI Open. And 700 with 24 hours notice, 700 people showed up
Wow.
and said, we're going to keep AI open. It was this crazy moment. You can look back at the videos and images. It's often referred to as like the EAC rave, like that was at the birth of, effective accelerationism, you know, and we're like, there's Morpheus, there's EAC, Eric's DJing, Grime
Oh, you froze.
showed up. It was a wild event holding these decentralized AI summits. And we did the first one in Austin, and then we did one at, ETH Denver, and it started to build this momentum. And so that's sort of the origin story. It was birthed out of like them trying to ban math and like the hell you are, and we're gonna open source all this. So
I love how many good things come from stupid government actions trying to make you not do something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was very reminiscent of if you remember the crypto wars of the 90s,
Hmm.
right? Where they tried in 1991, the government proposed to ban encryption for email. And they said they were going to read every email ever written, and encryption is bad, encryption is evil. The
It's
government
ammunition.
literally class it's a munition, right? It's a dual use military technology. That fight went from 91 to 1999. It took 9 years for sort of, cooler heads to prevail. And eventually Google and Microsoft was like, well, maybe we actually need encryption to sell international software. And they got the government to rescind the restrictions. But to his credit, famously Phil Zimmerman,
Hmm.
the
Pretty good price.
cryptographer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Pretty good privacy, PGP. But he walked across the border with a t-shirt with the math on it and asked to be arrested because he was revealing this secret math to foreign people. And they arrested him. And in 1995, he won in court something about, free speech,
I've
First
heard of that
Amendment, at
concept, but
least
I,
back in 95.
it's very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
archaic.
Yeah, the judge was unwilling to ban books and t-shirts and, language, right? And so he won, though the government never appealed it all the way to Supreme Court. They kind of left it at the lower levels.
I bet they did.
But we basically got to speed run that whole experience where we pulled a Phil Zimmerman and we're just open sourcing all of this stuff. The unlikely ally was Zuckerberg. So this is when Zuckerberg was starting to release Llama,
Hmm.
and you remember they leaked Llama 1. They didn't officially release anything. It just somebody leaked it,
Hmm.
right? And it was really well received. And then they released Llama 2. He ended up training Llama 3 and speed running the regulations and released it one day before the Commerce Department's uh, dual use rules went into effect. And he broke the size of the requirements that they were saying you couldn't release a model over this size.
Hmm.
And so he, to his credit, he speed run and then open sourced a model that broke all the requirements and sort of made it,
That's hot.
sort of a
But
joke.
but
Yeah. So
you're kind
anyway,
of teasing me with all these conferences and locations. What do I need to do to get you to Dubai?
I would love to get to Dubai. I think we can make that happen later this year. I know there's some good events coming up. I'm definitely gonna be at Token in Singapore and thinking Dev Connect in November. It's in Buenos Aires this year.
I think
So yeah,
I'm not gonna say the name of the conference, but there's this particular one I want you here for. We need
cool.
your brain. We need
I love
your
to.
mojo.
I, I I spoke at the first Bitcoin conference in 2014 that Bruce
I
put
know.
on in Dubai. I've been
Amazing.
there a number of times. Got a lot of friends over there.
I love it. So what else would you like to share with our audience on this topic?
So the biggest thing I would say is it's 2012 again. It's 2013 again. There's this new thing that people are trying to understand that's obviously going to have a revolutionary impact. And the people that I told about Bitcoin that took action ended up having a really good outcome, right? And so I can't emphasize enough, just try the tools out, use them, get an agent on Morpheus, um, understand this because you can be for your friends and family like the guy that learned about Bitcoin in 2013,
Wait,
right?
say that again. You can
And
be what? Just repeat that last sentence.
you can be for people with AI what the guy that learned about Bitcoin in 2013
Got it. I
was to
understand.
his.
You can
You
be
became
the
that expert.
patriarch of you can be the one who created generational wealth.
Yes, yes. And I think that's what's going to happen. You look at the power of these technologies, and we're about to all get effectively a 5 or 10x to our organic brain power. Like I ran the numbers. I wrote an article recently defining brain power
Hmm.
as a unit of measure. And it's like 3 tokens per second is equivalent to like the 3 words per second that the average person can speak,
Hmm.
right? And if I look at that, an H100, the GPU has 300 brain power per second. And the new chips, the Blackwell ones, will have 1200 brain power per second. And then you add up the number of chips that exist in the world. It's like, oh, organic brain power last year was 7 trillion hours,
Hmm.
and AI brain power this year will be 50 trillion hours.
Really?
So yeah, so we're already at that tipping point where the majority of brain power is going to be via AI. But if it doesn't have a purpose, if it doesn't have an objective or a goal, it's not useful, right? And so the person ends up imbuing the objectives, the goals, the free will to the AI. Like it's not conscious. Like people anthropomorphize it like it's a human. It's not. Um, you need to give it objectives and you can multiply your brain power. using these tools. So,
Okay, now
we're at
here,
that.
I'm gonna be that guy. The Are you sure it's not a little bit conscious? Just a little? The more advanced models?
Nope.
I'm not saying there's a
It
person inside of it. There's something.
it's a word calculator. Trust me, I've gone all the way down the rabbit hole. It is a database that sits there, and when you query it, it comes out with the most likely token. Um,
Okay,
what starts
what
to
are
look
we?
that's a fair point, right? Or the neural net. Um, what's missing is it doesn't have a biological impulse, right? It doesn't natively have, an incentive built in genetically to achieve X, right? We do, right? To reproduce, to seek pleasure, to like all these things are deep biological impulses, right? And I don't think we need to reinvent that. We have 8 billion people who have desires and needs and want certain outcomes. And this is an amazing curation of all human knowledge, right? The new models have 10 trillion tokens they were trained on. That means they read the 10 trillion words on the internet and came out with this output, right? We've taken all of human knowledge and we've compressed it down to 100 gigabytes or whatever the size of the model is. And now I can just query all of human knowledge, which is incredible, but doesn't necessarily make it conscious. We may
Well, here,
eventually get
let
to
me throw this other one at you. Not being a tech guy, I think I was clever enough to make this point a year ago, which is embodied AI. This is before the robotics got truly good. Embodied AI is maybe going to cross that chasm because once it starts
hmm,
encountering the tactile real world, it doesn't exist in the world of internet text or digital images. I think that's if with proper algorithms in place or proper architectures in place, you'll get something where you won't be able to tell the difference anymore. And whether that's the same thing as
right.
consciousness is, of course, it's like a sophomore philosophy class. But
Yeah.
it's a whole philosophical zombie thing. But at some point, I feel like it's like Microsoft wrote that paper, like or there's the sparks of AGI, or the spark of AGI. AGI, it's not consciousness, but I feel like there's a little spark in there. I feel like there's a little something that's not quite here, but I can hear it. I can hear footsteps approaching.
Yeah. Well, I would agree. Once you have physical presence and persistence but at the end of the day, somebody is imbuing it with a goal. So that robot is walking around and folding the laundry or mowing the lawn or, babysitting your kid or whatever
Mm.
based on your instructions. So we have to be very careful. What are the objectives we're building in, right? You could go back to Asimov and the three laws of robotics, right? And it's the same questions we've had for 70 years, but now we're face to face with it. And we're at that moment. It's like, okay, what do we imbue it with? My argument would be the best outcomes. Well, if an individual human is imbuing their AI with their values and goals, I don't want a collectivized, centralized committee has decided these are the values, these are the goals. That's going to reflect a very narrow set of outcomes from a very narrow set of people, right? And so, just like free markets, just like everywhere else, if you have the individual
Hmm.
with the power to reflect their outcomes, we're gonna get the best outcomes. That's my view.
And I'll even say that maybe the kind of person that's attracted to Morpheus is maybe the kind of person you and I would want viewing their goals to the AI.
Sure. And I think the more of that we have, the better. And that's what we've ended up with technology, right? You have a personal smartphone. You probably don't use a company phone, right? Even though you could, because you want to take your contacts and your apps and your knowledge and everything you have with you, right, to each new
My,
role and
my
to
phone
each new thing.
has
So
Pegasus pre-installed.
there you go. Pre-installed.
It's
Exactly.
pre-installed.
So, I think we're going to get to the same point with AI. Everyone's going to want a personal AI for the same reasons that they have a personal phone.
I think so too. And I actually I think it's if you combine it with something like Neuralink, you maybe get an offset for Alzheimer's or ADHD or all this other stuff. or aging, you know,
Yep.
plus when you know, you and I are speaking in analog, physical, slow, serial manner, but maybe once we get AI enabled neural links, we can actually communicate you and I better. Transmit images to
Yep.
people's brains directly and
Yeah.
make them.
I've thought about that often. It's like the speed of communication is going to get so wildly fast. It's going to be really amazing. Well, and it just tells me that we're moving from the bottleneck, like being doing the work, to describing the work.
Yes.
Like, what do I want it to do? The question becomes, okay, what do I want to accomplish more than like the time it takes to accomplish it? It's actually articulating and fine-tuning what I want to do versus manually writing the code or whatever I'm trying to do.
Interesting time, my friends. My friend and my
Oh yeah.
friends. All right, David, I appreciate it. I appreciate you initiating the discussion. I'm proud of you as always for keeping in the game with your serial successes and your serial children and your, single marriage, which is admirable. You know, good job, young man. And I look forward to having you in Dubai. And I look forward to checking in on you with you on the progress of Morpheus and every other thing you're involved in. So good man.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
you too, brother.
And
I'll talk
I'm
to you
gonna
soon.
kill the recording. There you go.